When it comes to marketing your products and services, AI has completely turned your marketing on its head. And how do you deal with this? How do you get through it? What should you be doing? What do you throw out? What do you keep? And how do you actually transition to AI marketing when people aren't coming to a website? They're looking for information and you need to make sure they get to your information and that information is impactful and that it actually gets where you want to go. So lots of opportunities. It's opened things up, I think, for the business owner. And at the same time, it's like a little overwhelming. And we have, fortunately, somebody to make it less overwhelming. Vanitha Swaminathan is with us today. She is a new expert on this. And we really appreciate, Vanitha, you being on the Wealthability Show with us today.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you for having me on the show. I was having a great exchange with Tom earlier about his work on tax-free wealth, and he was asking me about AI and marketing. So we're looking forward to sharing some of the insights from my new book called Hyperdigital Marketing. So thank you for having me on your show.
Um, Absolutely. So first of all, give us a little of your background. How did you get in, what caused you to really focus on this and to the point where this is it changes every minute and you've written a book on it.
Yeah. Thank you again for asking that question. I think this field, marketing, is ever changing. It's one of the things I love about it. It's also one of the things that makes it very challenging. While many of us are still grappling with the changes that digital era imposed on marketers, we're now faced with yet another transformation, and I call this transformation the hyper-digital era. The hyper-digital phrase really draws inspiration from the term hyper-intelligence, and that was coined by an author by the name of Lovelock to characterize an era where new beings will emerge from artificial intelligence systems. These new beings will be capable of thinking 10,000 times faster than we as humans do. And we are, in fact, witnessing some of the early stages of that, where with the introduction of generative AI tools and technologies, a lot of our products and services are capable of becoming hyper intelligent, hence the word hyper digital age. And I'm sort of highlighting several new pillars that marketers have to focus on in this hyper digital age. It's a project I've been working on for several years. Branding and digital technologies has been my focus area for research for a couple of decades now, and also has been something that I teach about, I write about. And so this project seemed to be something that I have to say something about, and therefore the book.
That's awesome. So some of us, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are, they've been fighting with SEO, the search engine optimization. Google changes its algorithms all the time. And now all of a sudden we have ChatGPT, which has basically, to me, made Google obsolete. And so now we're looking at, all right, I can get exactly the information I want, and it will take me to the place that will give me that information. So let's start, if we can, with something simple that I think most business owners understand, and that is, how to get people from where they are to you.
Yeah, I think it's a good point you make. I think it's a very insightful question. Yes, SEO is down. I was at an industry conference recently where they were talking about traffic through SEO is down 30%. So that's significant. And what's taking its place is AI agents and AI,
Right.
AI platforms like ChatGPT that can now, in fact, search the web and give you very precise information to answers to your questions about what product to use or what service to go after. And that is a huge transformation. How do businesses actually cope with this? And it's an interesting question.
Yeah. So how do you, for example, let's take that as a simple example we can before we get into the broader picture, into the, other things like personalizing your marketing. How is it, how do you have to function to get people to you?
Yeah.
What do you have to do differently?
Yeah, I think the question you're asking can be addressed at two levels. At a very tactical level, if you want to think about some of the principles that drive search engine optimization, have a great website, have information that's easy to comprehend on your website about how your products and services actually address a key problem. Those principles are still valid today in the age of what we call now AEO, or AI engine optimization, or AI agent optimization, if you will. Having a great website, having content that's easy to find, having content that is very relevant to the target audience and to the queries are still very relevant today in the age of AI engine optimization, or AEO, instead of SEO. That said, I can also address that same question that you asked, Tom, at a very strategic level. What is a business to do strategically to be able to survive, compete, and thrive in this AI age? And that's where I think the Hyper Digital Marketing book, I've outlined 6 pillars that every marketer or business owner or entrepreneur would probably be wise to think about and implement within the context of their business.
So
And that's
if you
at a more
can give us an example. So I'm not asking you to give us all 6, but we want to read the book. But give us if you were saying, hey, here's really just one or two things you need to focus on, what would they be?
I think one of the pillars of the 6-pillar framework that I think is meaningful is thinking about your brand as a platform. How do you, in fact, platformize yourself in a way that you're actually solving critical questions that your consumer has, as opposed to selling a product or service? And in the book, I offer sort of a way or a process for firms to think about platformization of their business. And that could involve things like bringing in, for example, ways for consumers to participate or co-create products and services with your brand, implementing certain tools and technologies that allow for that co-creation, having developers work on your product or service to create unique solutions. So platformization is one of my favorite sort of pillars, if you will, that will really transform how businesses think about what they do.
So I thank you. I know one of the things you talk about is basically personalization. So you actually get to that target. Now those who have been working on branding and marketing for years and years know that, knowing who our avatar is, who that person is that we're trying to get to, and making sure our marketing campaigns go to those people. That's always, that's long been critical, but it seems like with AI, can we actually make it even more personal to the and actually make our avatar more detailed as to who it is that we're looking for this particular thing?
Love the question again, Tom. Very insightful question. I think, again, we can think about personalization at different levels. So personalization could just be understanding who your customer is, what they're looking for, and providing them with a solution to their query. But there's a different level of personalization that AI enables today, and that is what I call, or some industry leaders have called, empathy at scale. How do you actually provide that empathetic understanding of what the customer is looking for and convey that empathy through AI tools, right? For example, voice assistants like Alexa or Siri can now potentially have emotion embedded in their voices in such a way that, let's say a customer comes to you and is feeling a little down, Alexa and Siri, imagine, would be able to change their voice to express sympathy and express that empathy for the customer that they previously couldn't get. And so the AI tools that are available today are making empathy at scale possible. And I think that's one of the magic tools that marketers will be well advised to integrate into their products and services. Ultimately, every marketer should really, really understand what their customer is about and what it is that they're seeking to do. That doesn't go away. But now there is an ability for the marketers to be able to do that at scale, or communicate empathy at scale in a way that wasn't previously possible, which I think is the cool thing about personalization in today's world.
So kind of walk us through some of those mechanics, because, business owners very busy, everybody's trying to keep customers coming in and buying the products, et cetera. And so, now we've got to learn, it's like we have to learn a whole new way of doing things. How do you cope with that? Are there particular tools that you like, or what should we be searching for?
So as a marketer today, I think it would be helpful for you to understand that content creation and content dissemination has entered into a new world. you can literally take a standard video of your product and service and generate thousands of versions of that, varying who is featured in the videos, varying, like I said, the emotional tone that the person in the video is communicating with, varying the language that is being used in the video. And so that's all personalization at scale with empathy thrown in. So marketers should learn the tools of the trade that allow them to make those personalized communications available to their customers. And there's a whole lot of tools now available for us to be able to do that. Are they very good? Maybe not. Not today, but they're
Oh,
every day getting better and more sophisticated in a way that it just boggles your mind.
but what's great is not only are they getting better, they're getting cheaper. So that
Exactly.
you can actually
Exactly.
afford them where it might have been $30 a minute. Now it's $30 a month.
Yeah.
That type of a thing is going on. I know. And so you're saying like, for example, if you do a video, that AI could actually take that video. So you do one video instead of having to do 150 videos, and you do one video, and it actually AI can change that video, modify it without you having to do it to go to that particular emotion or what you're trying to attract, and actually make it much more personalized to whoever you're bringing in. Are but
Yes.
it's still an outward, right? So it's not going to change real time when somebody sees it. In other words, you're going to see, if I send this out, you're going to see the same video I'm going to see.
I think it might, the technology is there for us. I was reading that Gucci, for example, in some of its international store locations has gesture responsive interfaces. So, or facial expression responsive interfaces, that's coming. Another one of the pillars I talk about is a term I call Phygital. It's the combination of physical and digital interfaces that can immediately respond to the person's facial expression or gestures in a way that again allows you to do that personalization at scale uh, of physical sort of touch points, which I think is mind blowing, and that's kind of where I think the technology is heading towards. But on your previous point, yes, absolutely, you can make 1,000 versions of one video in different languages with different emotions. All you need is an avatar. And I was reading recently that there's also a move towards taking CEO content. So the CEO speaking to their employees and making that into in different ways and communicating that same messaging to different audiences. And so the technology is definitely here for us to be able to do that.
Now, I was just listening to him going, it sounded like in order to respond though, like for the AI to respond, it would have to be able to see the person, right? So is it like is this where we need to be a little concerned about our privacy because
I think it's
because when you
also,
click on that video, it's actually looking your
yeah.
camera now is on.
Yeah, it could be that, or it could also be designing your chatbots, your voice assistants in a way that
Okay,
elicits that information. And so to
based
be
on what they
able,
type in,
yeah, based on, and so asking the right questions. And so with generative AI, it's really now responding to questions. And so,
right?
ensuring that you have the right chatbot design in order to elicit the information in an empathetic way from your customer can allow you to create these highly personalized interfaces that could then be optimized for customer satisfaction or engagement.
Now, one of the things that's become very clear to me. I'm in a very obviously technical area of tax, and uh, in my field, at least, if you don't ask the right question, you're going to get the wrong answer. So an AI just makes it worse. So my job is, I've always told people, my job is asking the right question. So as a customer, you don't know what question asks. So how do you actually get use your marketing or your agents to get them to ask the right question? Because that's really what it is. They're asking one thing, but what they may want is something completely different. And the
Yeah.
solution may be very different than what they're asking. So is that the generative that you're talking about, where it's a back and forth conversation?
Exactly. So you're right. Financial literacy is really important, Tom, and I'm glad you're doing this work. because I think it's really helping a lot of people. But you're right, the different customers might look for different types of financial literacy based on where they are. A young person with a lot of debt, for example, might need a different kind of AI agent than, let's say, an older person who's looking to figure out how to maximize their savings in order to retire. And so these are very different audiences, and they're going to require very different kinds of advice. And you, as a human, are probably an expert in being able to tailor that advice. I'm not saying that AI agents are faultless. There are huge challenges with over reliance on AI. In fact, there was a recent paper published in one of our journals, Journal of Marketing, where the key takeaway was the less AI literate a consumer is, the more they're likely to rely on AI agents, which is
Right.
dangerous because they don't know to question what
Exactly.
they're getting. So really, again, some of the advice in the book, and what I would like to reemphasize is that it's really a collaboration, AI human collaboration. So while you might use your AI agent in your particular case to elicit what are the goals of that financial literacy from the customer that is approaching you, which stage of their financial planning are they in, then ultimately you may have to create some versions of advice based on where they are, what are their goals, and what outcomes they're looking to achieve. And that really requires a collaboration of AI and human. It can't just be you tell the AI bot to go out and do it, and it does, because frequently AI agents are, at least currently, able to make huge mistakes, and that could be a problem.
Yes, I find that AI is exponentially faster and makes exponentially more mistakes. So, one of the things that AI does for us, of course, is it makes producing content so much faster, so much easier. Are you finding that, or are you suggesting that on your website you might have, instead of you have 20 pages of content on your website, you have 2,000 pages, and that those pages are where people are, you're personalizing those pages, because you could do it. I mean, it's not that. I'm in a project right now where I'm actually personalizing information through a book, and making that personal. And we're using AI agents. We're using AI to do that, because you've already have the information, right? It's just, and then it's pulling out to the large language models like ChatGPT to
Yeah.
actually do the work for you. Is that something that you're seeing is working for people, that they actually have that much more information on their website? Because a search, if I go into Perplexity and I search, I'm going to a particular point on a website. I'm not going to the website. I'm going to
Right.
that point that gives me that information from the
So
website.
that used to be done through SEO in the past, right? It
Right.
would sort of
Right. Now it's AI.
look at the prompt and then send you to a different landing page. So now you're doing the same kind of thing, but you're eliciting the information from customers and directing them to different pages. A lot of upfront work has to be done by you, the human, to kind of make sure that your mental models of what you think about when you think about that product are effectively reflected in whatever design you choose for your AI powered products and services, and how they're personalized. So you really have to do, it has to be AI, human AI collaboration. It cannot just be ChatGPT doing its thing. It has to be customized. And that custom GPT that you create really should reflect your values, your sort of focus areas, and how you create nuanced version of your generic advice for different types of customers.
So branding is something we've talked about previously on this show, and branding, I think, is all about identifying who your customer is, who you want as your customer, and who is the logical customer. How do you use AI? A can Are you using AI to identify who that customer is and what all their preferences are, and then from there going to, okay, so what do I have to do on my website so that
Yeah.
I match up this customer with this
Yeah.
this marketing?
Yes. So absolutely. You can start the process of leveraging AI tools from when you decide you want to create a brand. So even for simple things like how do you position your brand? What is your purpose? You could use AI tools that can crawl the web and identify what are people's focus areas now as it relates to your product or service. How can you leverage that information more significantly as you develop a positioning statement? How do you monitor how people are changing their conversations about your brand, right? So and there a lot of the cultural conversations surrounding your brand take place now on digital and social media channels.
Hmm.
And we used to have listening platforms being able to leverage what the latest discussions are around your brand. And now you could use some of these AI tools to be able to identify what are the cultural conversations that are associated with your brand, and how do you ensure that that is accurately being reflected in how you position. How do you derive a purpose for your brand? Is that something that you can also do using that information about the marketplace? Again, there is no substitute for you as a marketer actually talking to your customers. But again, I think AI tools can get you at least a third of the way there, if not half the way there, in terms of getting you started on this journey, which ultimately you have to take over and control and manage and monitor. Another way in which you could utilize these tools are identifying partnerships. So, how do you actually look online for um, brands that seem to be speaking in the same way to the target audience that you're interested in? And those could become potential good partners for you to consider in the future. So that's another opportunity for marketers.
I like that. I like that a lot. Those are really practical. Thank you. Um, Now I'm going to go back to the beginning just for a minute here. Hyperdigitalization. That's the term that you use. That's the name of the book, Hyperdigital Marketing. Um, how do you cope with it? I mean, this hyper is, I mean, it's it invokes the image of speed, right? It's hyper. It's like super fast. It's super complex. Granted, AI can do this, but how do we as business owners actually differentiate that from all the digital marketing we've been doing?
Yeah. I think it's hard. I'm not saying that this is easy, but I do think that if you are already have sort of done one pivot with digital tools and technologies, it's time for another pivot. And I think I'm hopeful that some of the ideas in the book will help you get there. And I do think that the AI transformation that takes place within organizations can be done in a series of small steps every single day. And some of it is very fundamental. It's fundamentally rethinking processes, how you organize around these processes. Let's take a very simple example of lead generation in your sales force.
Perfect.
Previous practices would involve maybe consulting email lists or so on, sending out a bunch of emails. That's not necessary anymore, right? So you can actually leverage some tools of AI to do some of that work for you. That will require some fundamental rethinking of processes within organizations. So I would encourage managers to really think of this as another big pivot that they have to do. And that pivot has to be fairly fundamental. It's not just tactical things like, okay, let's hire one of these AI content creation sort of tools and help us create ads. While that's great, there is also a fundamental way in which you can integrate AI. My concern, of course, as an educator and as a professor, is how does it impact your workforce? I do think that a displacement is happening. It's
For
possible
sure.
that some of the jobs that are going away are going to be replaced by new jobs. And I think employers and businesses have to be aware and create conditions for their workforce to make that transition. And I'm often reminded of the horse-drawn carriages and how they were replaced by automobiles, right? We had so many jobs, such as horse carriage driver, somebody who had to fix the wheels on the horse carriage. All those jobs went away, but in its place were whole new jobs, such as like an automobile repair technician, or somebody who works in an assembly line in a factory. Whole new workforces were created. We're at a similar moment in history where I think there is a
Mhm.
displacement happening. And I think employers have to be aware and willing to prepare their workforces for that transition.
I like that perspective, Vanitha. I think that's great. That there are a lot of people talking about. Well, like I was just on somebody the other day, actually, who's in the AI SEO world, and he says he thinks that you will only have a job if you want to have a job. Well, we'll see what happens there. But I'm more on. I think more like you do is that hey, we're going to be changing the jobs. And I actually think they're going to get more interesting because I think that they're going to require more of what humans are good at as opposed to mechanical things that computers are good
Yeah.
at. Um, but you'd also talked about, you also talked, and we talked earlier on the show, you mentioned getting involved with the client. How do you do that? So you get them to come to your website, right? You're involving them, starting with social media and beyond. You get them into anything on your website. You immediately want to have a conversation with them. Is that fair?
Yes. I think customers are now empowered with tools that allow them to perform some of the customization that you used to do as a marketer. And so, to the extent that they can meet you halfway and help you create products that they want to see, you should leverage that. And I think that's, again, the power of the technology and the ability to engage your customer in these ways in co creating content or co creating products and services. I think whenever I present this, that participation piece is one that elicits a great deal of enthusiasm and excitement, whether it's my students or industry professionals, because I think that's where they see some opportunities, I think, for creating exciting things for your customers that involve their own input.
Well, the good news is people have really already gotten used to having a conversation with a computer.
Yes,
So, and so it seemed like one of the most important things then is that we actually capture that data so that when they're in our website and we've got that agent's, they're talking to our agent, that's actually being captured, and that we're making sure that we're putting the guts in that technology behind that so that we can actually use all that data that we can be capturing because they're having that conversation.
exactly, exactly. And so again, we talked about processes and how to redesign processes. Having a data focus within the organization is, of course, one of those big process redesign things that we have to do. A lot of organizations are already there, but it also might require a change in how you design cross-functional teams, for example, that are all looking at the same data. So that's another kind of key pivot that has to happen.
Interesting. So when you talk about how to implement, it's it's great when we get a book that's practical because I think your book's very practical. Um, how do how do you recommend? Uh, I'm talking about your customer now, right? How do you recommend that the customer, somebody reading your book, actually adopts and applies the six pillars?
I think it's not necessarily all tactical, like I said. So there has to be a willingness to really rethink things from base case, like how do you actually reinvent some parts of your organization to cope with these changes. And I think a lot of small steps, I think I've laid out a framework, and I'm very keen to see that the framework gets adopted within the organization through a series of maybe baby steps. And I would be available if anyone wants some help. And I'm thinking of um, teaching a few executive education workshops in the next year that brings together people that are trying to make this change. It's not going to be easy. Some of the things that I've advocated for are hard. Change is hard. And I think it's going to take, like I said, a willingness to change and then having a planned series of smaller steps that will allow you to get there. But I think it can be done. And there's lots and lots of case studies in the book, and it's also a lot of evidence from research. So you can see what those examples are and maybe model some of the changes you're trying to make based on those case studies.
Okay, so first step, read Hyper Digital Marketing. Second step sounds like it's okay, get the idea that things are completely different and you have to kind of throw out a lot. Don't throw everything out, but throw a lot out. Keep that SEO, but change the way you do you're doing the SEO because of the way people searching. You got to think about that. What would be that? What would be the third thing you would have people do?
I like your point about throwing things out. That's the hardest thing sometimes, right? I mean, you have to, again, when you're thinking about legacy processes and legacy people with certain capabilities, how do you actually bring them along on this journey is going to be a big question that not only marketers, business leaders, CEOs have to grapple with. How do you bring people along? we are having some of the same conversations within universities. How do we actually teach this to our students, right? And what do we stop teaching to make room for some of the new things that we are teaching? So there's definitely across industries, it's the same kind of issue. And so you said, read the book, sort of create sort of a plan and identify areas that have to change, but also areas that maybe have to be discontinued. And the third piece of it is becoming sort of creating the capabilities within the organization, which could include retraining, bringing in new people, and really wholly rethinking how you think about processes within your organization. So that change has to be implemented in a systematic way over time.
As they say, change or die, right? So it seems to me like you've got to have really a hyper connection with your customers and who that customer is, who you want them to be, where are they, what are they doing, all that kind of stuff. And the good news is we have all that, we have so much data that has been generated over the last 20 years from Meta and from Google, et cetera. So we have access to that data now through AI tools. So the book is Hyper Digital Marketing, the 6 pillars here in an AI powered world. Life is changing and life is moving fast. And the good news is we got tools for it. We have great people like Vanitha Swaminathan, and it's awesome to have you on the show. And it's awesome. If you would tell us where we could get more about you and really what you're doing.
I think I have a website. If you search for my name, I'm at the University of Pittsburgh School of Business. I also have a separate website called profvanitha.com. So there's a lot of information I'll be posting. I'm also available on LinkedIn. So if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, I'll be posting about this topic. And I wish all of you, and you particularly, Tom, all the best. Good luck on this journey. And thank you for doing the work that you're doing too. I think the work that you're doing in elevating financial literacy is super important. And so thank you for doing that. And thank you for having me on your show. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. And remember everyone that, even though this is very disruptive to us and it's disruptive to our lives, once we get our arms around the thought process behind it and kind of we rethink our thinking, I actually think in a lot of ways it's more natural than I think the hyper digital world to me is a more natural way of thinking than the digital world, because we don't have to box it. We can actually, it's like throughout, and we have so many more tools. We just have to really get a handle on this. And when we do, like we like to say on the Wealthability Show, we're always going to make way more money and pay way less tax. We'll see you next time.
Sounds great. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for listening to the Wealthability Show. If today's episode gave you a new perspective, remember this: the tax law is not your enemy. It's a roadmap. And when you know how to follow it, you can build real, lasting wealth. If you're a business owner or investor who's tired of overpaying taxes, the Wealthability Accelerator is your next step. You'll have the opportunity to work directly with me for 80% less than my standard rate. And I'll personally guide you through how to change your facts so that you can change your tax. Go to wealthability.com/bonus and apply today. Remember, it's not just what you make, it's what you keep.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.